This week we learn some spells as we hunt quests. I think my favorite one is where I can steal everyone's light. This and more on episode 154 of Indie Game Riot. Indie Game Riot! Everybody, I am Josh, back with another episode of Indie Game Riot, episode 154. If you might notice, to my right, that is not Eric. If you didn't know Eric, if you didn't find out already, which you probably did, but if you didn't find out already, Eric decided to resign as host. He's still nothing bad, he just has a lot going on in his life and didn't feel like he could contribute the way he needed to any longer. That said, I am very pleased to announce that Mr. Ian McCammett
Hello.
is over there, and he is joining me as host now for the foreseeable future.
I also have a lot going on in my life, but I can always use another reason to not focus on it.
To not
focus on the...
To not do life.
Yeah, totally. I mean, video games, right? It's all about escapism, right? I take that very seriously.
Yeah, buddy. For those of you who don't know, my relationship with Ian is one of professionalism. That's,
in the loosest sense of the term.
Yeah, I guess. But we used to work on a game together called Tether. We covered it a while back. But unfortunately, Tether is on an indefinitely put on the back burner due to financial constraints and just a lot going on. Ian was the co-founder of that company and the narrative director and now co-host of Indie Game Riot. That is such a step up. I gotta
well, thank you.
If I do say so myself.
You know, I'm trying to keep that upward mobility, that upward momentum for sure.
You'll be on like the charts.
Public life. I mean, what a change.
And this being the first episode that you're on, you're going to go first. What's been going on in your life since this is your first time? Not just in the past week, but the past however many years you've been alive.
Oh yeah, well. We don't need to go back that far. It
all started when my father
did a few things.
My father forgot to wear a condom.
Well, yeah. My father forgot to wear a condom. Some shit happened. I remembered to wear a condom, and now I'm here. So, unbeholden to anyone. But yeah, I don't know. The most exciting thing that's been going on in my life right now is that I'm going to formalize my game dev, by going and actually studying it at grad school in Canada. So I'm actually moving up to Canada.
Treason.
I know. It's horrifying. But I have my reasons, Recon, I'm going to go up. I'm going to get all of the good, video game development intelligence from George Brown College, and then I'm going to apply it and give it to the masses, hopefully.
Also, Canada's cool because they have very cheap school.
They do, yeah, absolutely.
That's probably a big reason.
Relative to here, they have cheap lots of things, actually. So
yeah.
That's
cheap snow.
Cheap snow, yes.
Cheap moose. Cheap
Absolutely.
Mounties.
Oh man, that's what I'm the most excited about is
all the maple leaves you could ask for. You gonna go watch some hockey?
I'm gonna have to. I've been told that that's actually mandatory. That probably gonna be asked.
You can't even enter the border until you.
I've been briefed. My girlfriend, who is Canadian, has briefed me, and I support the Leafs. That's very crucial.
Hold on. No. Flyers. All right.
The Flyers. Oh, come on, Philly. I'm supposed to go up to the Canadian border and tell them that I support a Philadelphia.
You could wear You could wear your orange and black underneath your nasty blue and white, or whatever the fuck it. No, is that Ottawa or Montreal? I forget.
I'm not that advanced yet. I haven't gotten that far yet. Although, interesting anecdote regarding the Flyers. I one time did not qualify for a relationship with a girl because I was insufficiently into the Flyers. How about that?
I mean, that's dedication.
Philadelphia, you PA people, man, you don't fuck around.
Hey, man, best fan base in the world. I don't care what you say.
The Eagles win, you riot. The Eagles lose, you riot.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. That's what's important, man.
That's what I'm talking about.
I can't wait. Man, I tears were in my eyes on that Super Bowl night. I digress. For me, I've got a lot going on. For those of you who don't know, between Eric leaving and then I also had surgery for taking my gallbladder out, which is why we haven't been around for the past few weeks, I think. So this is the first time I felt comfortable enough to do the show. Laughing still hurts, I gotta be honest, but I might be a little sore after talking for a while, but it's alright. I got some quality narcotics.
You still have a lot of gall for having your bladder removed, I have to say.
Yeah, I know. I asked them to leave a little bit in. That's how that works.
I'm really sorry about that one.
This is what Ian brings to the show. Puns and, as we discussed before the show started, old-timey phrases. So we're going to get a lot of catchphrases for the show. That's why I brought them on. So there is that, and currently my state is flooded, as I was mentioning before the show. A lot of rain, and that's kind of crazy. If you live in Pennsylvania, I'm sorry. You're going to swim to work, apparently. And then lastly, this is a little bit, I'm debating if I should say this or not. I'll say it because I'm not gonna put it anywhere else yet. But, for those of you who are here and care, I got my first, I signed on with my first agent for voiceover, out in San Francisco. They are. And I'm excited about that. They've already sent me some nice gigs.
It's huge, man.
And yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. That's a big milestone for a career in voiceovers to get that first agent, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm excited for that. And that was part of it too. It was funny though because she got back to me and picked me up like right before I went into the hospital. She didn't pick me up yet, but she got back to me and was asking me some follow-up questions and stuff. And then as I was in the hospital, like right after surgery, I was laying in bed like the middle of the night, and I saw I got an email from her sending an audition my way, and I'm like, no, come on. And it was like due that night. I was like, I'm full of holes, so I had to like turn that down. I felt embarrassed but you know, it was just bad timing. It was all right. So, yeah, good times. But here we are, episode 154. We're going to keep going and see what this new chapter in IGR's life is going to be like, thanks to Ian. I'm pretty excited about it. Ian's a cool dude.
I'm hugely excited. I've been looking forward to this.
And, of course, he has an email address. And as I said in our Discord, send all dick pics now to Ian at indiegameriot.com.
And butts. Dicks and butts.
Speaking of butts, you know where you get injections a lot?
In the butt?
Yeah. We should get that indie news injection right in the ass.
Oof.
Are you bored with the same old games?
Yeah.
Why, then give yourself an indie news injection.
Thanks, Indie Games.
This week on Indie News Injection, the very first thing we're talking about is I have a little bit of an announcement IGR related now that surgery and things like that have calmed down. Ian's not even privy to this yet, I don't think. I don't think I mentioned it to you yet, but this is a bit of a soft announcement. I haven't like fully announced it, and I've contacted a few people already. But we're trying to build up a library for something called Indie Arsenal, which is a storefront that we're setting up.
Mention this briefly.
Did I? Okay, good.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Indie Arsenal, basically the idea is that we want it to be heavily curated, so it's not being buried. Not that there's anything wrong with itch.io, But there's just a lot on itch.io that isn't fully developed. That it's like people's first time projects that they've ever worked on, that sort of stuff, and things tend to get buried on there. Steam also has the problem with lack of curation, because just people just shove shovelware on there and stuff like that.
Steam is less an arsenal than it is a nuclear waste dump.
But we've talked about that on the show before. So heavy curation is a big part of it on the consumer side of it. On the dev side of it, for those of you who are devs, because we have a lot of dev listeners, if you want to put your game on a show, it has to be fully developed. So no, we're not doing early access or anything like that. But 100% of the proceeds go to the devs. Profit goes to the devs. The way that Indie Arsenal would get any money is basically you donating a percentage of your revenue if you choose to do so. You don't have to, but it's an option. Also, people that buy games, if they appreciate their service, there's an option to send $5 our way as a tip, basically. So it's just there to get great games in front of people and have people buy it. That's the idea of it. That's what Indie Game Riot's always been about, is helping devs, deserving devs and deserving indie games get in front of audiences and make their careers come to fruition. So Indie Arsenal is really in the same vein as that. If you are a dev with a completed game and you'd like to submit your game to Indie Arsenal, we have a submission form on the page, but the page is not live, so you would have to just email me. You can email me, josh@indiegameriot.com, and I'll let you know what we need after you email me your interest from there. So that's that. Next, some real news for indie games. Some of this may be old. You may know about some of this stuff already. As I've said, we've been gone for a few weeks, so some of this has carried over, but I still wanted to talk about it. Friday the 13th, the game that is the wrong image. Friday, the game that is questionably indie, because I've always questioned licensed content as indie. Sometimes people consider Telltale indie, which technically speaking, because they're self-funded, they are, but at the same time, I don't know, licensed stuff just does not seem indie to me. Anyway,
there's indie the community and indie the business model, and maybe some overlap there.
That's not what we're talking about today. The point is, Friday the 13th is developed by a company that's indie. However, the game, through all of its bugs and development hell, is now dropped. Has been canceled, essentially. I know a lot of people liked it, but there was that other game that came out slightly beforehand called Dead by Daylight. It had the same kind of concept. It's been a lot more successful, and that is indie. In my opinion, I should say. The
trailer was so brutal, though. The Deaths trailer. I mean, oh man, it was like
for Friday the 13th.
For Friday the 13th, it just took me back. High school, death metal, the whole.
They made it look great, but once you got into there were just so many server issues and just bugs with trying to get away from Jason and everything like that. And Jason was a little overpowered, in my opinion. It seems like Dead by Daylight was a little bit more balanced. They had a better game plan going in, I think, with Dead by Daylight. Friday the 13th was also suffered from the hype issue.
Right,
I think,
and the licensed title that comes with it's sort of prepackaged.
There's a lot of expectations,
fandom and etc. Yeah, it's expectations.
Yeah, I believe Gun Media is the developer of Friday the 13th, and then actually I think even though they licensed it, I guess there was a legal issue as well that kind of brought this about. Where the people who made the game and the people who made the movies were arguing as to who owned the rights to the game, the IP. Which I feel like when you license something, that's kind of like one of the things that should come up. That seems kind of obvious to me.
Yeah, well, like with I think any sort of legal proceedings, there's always hiccups that can occur. I remember reading a while ago that the reason that there hasn't been a sequel to the a next installment in the No One Lives Forever series is because no one, different companies own different amounts of it, and nobody can figure out who owns the rights in order to do whatever they're going to do. So it can definitely get really weird.
I don't know. I just feel like that's something that should be hashed out before the game even releases. I just don't. I don't know. I mean, unless someone must have been pushing to get it out by a certain time in order for that to, because it just seems like something that you would just logically figure out beforehand.
Lack of legal foresight. Maybe they really are an indie developer.
There you go. That's a joke for you indie devs out there. By the way, it's another nice thing about having Ian on the show. Ian probably has the most experience as a dev rather than an indie fan or press or anything like that, which is nice to have that point of view. So there you go. Inside indie dev joke.
It's my blessing and my curse.
Speaking of blessings and curses, we have more news for No Man's Sky. Yesterday, No Man's Sky just released its newest, biggest update to date called No Man's Sky Next. And a lot of people are basically saying that it's making the game just like a brand new game, essentially. I honestly haven't played No Man's Sky since before the last big update, which was Atlas. I haven't played it since before Atlas. So when I played it, it is all brand new between the base building and the multiplayer. And by the way, the big thing with this update is the multiplayer. That was the thing that was promised, of course. Or I don't know if promised is the right word, but it was definitely insinuated that would be in the game when it initially launched. But it was like a faux. It was a faux multiplayer where people ended up. It was like they didn't think it was possible for people to meet up because of how large the game is.
That's generous. It was so faux that people actually were talking as though like a fraud had been committed.
Yeah. Oh, I think they probably had a bunch of lawsuits filed up against them. I don't know if any of them were followed through with, because
No.
I don't know how. I don't know if there's a precedent set for that or not, but they because a lot of people pre-ordered it and it was a big issue, and obviously a lot of people hated the game. I will, we're talking about it before the show a little bit, but I will give props to Hello Games, who develops No Man's Sky, for just, they could have taken the millions they made from pre-orders and just been done. They're like, here's your game, sorry it didn't come out the way you wanted, but now we're rich. They have stuck with it. They've constantly updated. One of the biggest issues that they've had is lack of communication with the fan base. And with this last, better late than never, I guess, but with this last update, one of the things that they've said is that they're desperate to communicate better with their community. And to the point where they've actually created an entire website dedicated to that. I forget what it's called. It's like atlasproject.com or something. It's I'm not sure if it's listed in this article, but anyway, they've stuck with it. They've reinvested that money that they made into the game, and they're continuing for the next year. They're continuing free updates for the game, and I've played it. I played it yesterday, and I played some today, and with a friend of mine, and I've had a lot of fun. Today, I did have a moment where I was like about to rage quit because I got blown up by a pirate, and I was about to land on a planet when it happened, but then somehow my fucking dead body with my inventory was up in space, so I had to go fly up and get it. But one of the biggest things that's aggravating about the game is that there's really hardcore inventory management involved. You have very limited inventory space, so I had to drop shit just to pick up my old shit, and because I had some expensive stuff in there, it was just, I was getting a little pissed off about that. But I'm having a lot of fun with it to this point, with the base building and stuff.
What you said, about how they've really demonstrated their commitment by investing all of this money back into delivering on these ambitions. I mean, it really tells you a lot. I mean, game development not just at the indie level, at all levels. I mean, we don't need to go into Fable and all of that stuff, but certainly in the indie level, it's hard to find the difference between ambition that is driven by passion and ambition that's just driven by talking shit, just blowing smoke. And I think that when you do something like Hello Games has done and really committed to seeing through the original vision, it tells you a lot about the authenticity of that vision, and it reveals that they're certainly not, frauds.
Right. And the multiplayer too, just to kind of clarify, I don't know if it's necessarily what people thought it would be, where you could just run into people and play with them in the universe. It's more like a separate instance when you have to like join someone's game, and then you're in that game, and you can play with up to 4 people together. But it's not so much that you're running into people; it's that they have to join, and it just kind of picks up that person's like, you keep your progress. Like if you're playing by yourself, and then you joined my game, you would keep whatever progress and inventory that you had, but you would be in my experience. You know what I mean? Like if we were, because you would probably have started in a completely separate star system than I did, so you'd be in my star system and doing that sort of stuff, but with your progress, and then that would again carry over back to your game whenever you play by yourself. So that's the kind of multiplayer it is. Either way, I'm having fun. It was fun playing with someone, especially when we're fighting off space pirates or building bases. I thought that was extra fun. Sharing resources is good. There's a lot more. There's a big graphical overhaul. There's a lot more diversity in the procedural generation of the planets and animals and plants and things like that. I've seen some crazy ass animals. It's pretty impressive. That some disgusting looking ones, actually, I should say. It was upsetting, and some cool ones too. There were like sky sharks flying around, and there's like a narwhal thing in the water. The water is a little bit more populated. Space stations are more populated now. There's a lot more NPCs in there. You get quests. It's a big time change, and I'm happy with it. And I props to them for sticking with it. So, do you own No Man's Sky, Ian?
I do not. I was sort of in the sort of wait and see boat when it came out, and when it sort of floundered. I didn't end up picking it up. But hearing you talk about it now, and sort of seeing how far it's come. I mean, it definitely is sounding more like, especially with like a quest system and
you can own your own freighter.
Stuff like that. Yeah, I mean that I eat that shit up. I mean, I'm a huge fan of those immersive RPGs.
And you might appreciate the
property and
the story in this is a little bit subtle, I think, but you might appreciate it because it's mysterious.
Well, that's cool. I like that. I mean, I'm a big fan of the technique of storytelling where you tell as little of it as possible. And something I was curious about when you were talking about it, because sort of this idea of multiplayer involving like joining another player's world. When I hear something like that, it immediately makes me think of Dark Souls, and Dark Souls sort of subtly weaves that concept into the narrative. I was curious, is multiplayer accounted for in the sort of narrative substance of the world? It's
not like that multiplayer changes anything. It's just that you each have your own, like wherever you are in the quest line for that. That's your progress and your progress alone. You can help the other person do that progress. I don't know if it'll necessarily count for you. I was still kind of experimenting with some of that. Like you might, like if you, like there's these things in the game that teach you language of other races. And
that's cool.
I think we were testing it out if I were to activate one to have me learn a word, if the other person would also get something. And I think what happened, if I'm not mistaken, is that we both learned, even though I was the only one to activate it, but we learned different words. But anyway, you can progress your own quest line in someone else's game. It's just that it's your quest line. You know what I mean? It's
no, at the very least, it sounds like they definitely introduced some interesting dynamics, with their systems and whatnot. That's always cool.
It's you should get it, and we can have an IGR. Maybe a couple other people that own the game, if they want to play, we can have an IGR. Space, good old time in space.
Oh
space,
man, that
space
sounds like
riot.
a blast. It's all about space riots.
There you go. You know what else is a good place to have a riot?
Would it be a hospital?
Yes, hospital's a fantastic place for riots. 2 Point Hospital. For those of you who don't remember, I don't know how old some of you are, but there was a game called Theme Hospital a long time ago in the 90s, made by Bullfrog. They have now made, I don't know if you, I think, yeah, spiritual successor, not a sequel or a remake, called 2 Point Hospital, 2 Theme Hospital. And it's really cool. Of course, it's like a sim management thing where you build up your own hospital. You have to manage the patients and upgrade rooms and equipment and manage your employees and manage the finances, that sort of stuff. But there's definitely a humor to this, to 2 Point Hospital. There's a silliness. Like there's if you feel lightheaded, for instance, there's a machine that so people will come in and their head will look like a light bulb because they're lightheaded. Right up your alley, I know with these ones. Wordplay. So they'll come in, and there's a machine that they'll have to go to in your hospital that unscrews their head like a light bulb and then screws back on their normal head. And that cures them. People also die in 2 Point Hospital, so you have to deal with that in part of your management. It kind of gets dark as the bodies pile up, but pretty excited. We talked about this before, but the reason it's in the news now is because they now have a hard release date for August 30th. PC, Mac, and Linux going to be priced at... this is in euros, $24.99, which I'm not sure. Probably closer to $30 in American dollars. But I'm excited for it. I love these kinds of games. I love narrative games and I love sim management games. Those are like my top. I like a lot of games, but those are like my top two probably genres. So
I've been getting more and more into like sim management, and particularly like the threat management subgenre. So perhaps managing a zany hospital floor would be right up my alley.
Should add some tower defense to this game.
There you go.
So yeah, get excited for 2 Point Hospital. Those of you who are fans.
I have to confess, I had actually not even heard of anything about this.
You
game
never heard of
prior
Theme
to
Hospital?
I had not heard of Theme Hospital.
You're not that much younger than me.
I know. It's it's sort of weird. Although I guess it's because my interest in this sort of sim management game has only been very recent. I guess it just completely missed me. I know. But at least I'm a big enough man to admit it.
Well, more like a big enough a bitch. Just kidding.
My first night. My first night.
Part of your that's part of your job description as a co-host is just to be berated and
right. Well,
for me to just slam on you all the time.
Certainly wouldn't have signed up for this if I wasn't a masochist. Total verbal bottom. That's me.
I put that in the job description. That's all I'm saying.
The job description that you opted not to send to me, I guess.
Oh yeah, I just kept it for myself.
Although that in and of itself was part of the debasement that I would have to deal with.
So speaking of debasement,
I'm waiting for this segue. I really
the Culling 2 is being closed due to the debasement of the company that makes the Culling. Because which is Xaviant, by the way, that is the company that makes it. The Culling 2 is closed because people were like, what the fuck? You just abandoned the Culling to make a sequel? Which is what I said as well. Why would you make a sequel after literally abandoning the game like a month beforehand? They were probably abandoning the first game. So my thought is what they did. They were making the Culling, and it wasn't the direction that they wanted in the end. So they were like, you know what? It'd be easier to, instead of update this game, as we said we would, to just create a whole new game the way we actually want to, now that it's been, down the development road. So they were like, fuck the Culling 2. And people who bought the Culling were obviously like, excuse me? I bought this game. Fuck you. So,
and this was another thing. It was like strictly on my periphery. Like, I knew it existed. I wasn't following it very well. And when shit started to go down, I don't know, to me as an outsider, it all seemed to happen really, really fast. And I was getting most of my news on what was happening in the world of the Culling and the Culling 2 through memes, which may have made it seem even worse than it was, but it sounded pretty awful.
Yeah, we talked about the Culling. It was actually one of the games we featured on Peep Show a long time ago, and it is a fun game, and it's a battle royale game, and more closer to the style of like Hunger Games than I would say, rather than like PUBG or something. It's basically a bunch of people put into a domed area with hazardous environments. You get weapons and kill each other, last man standing. Right. But it's definitely closer to like the Hunger Games style, and it was pretty fun. But they were constantly supposed to be updating it, and they just gave up, and then eventually announced a sequel. And it kind of reminded me of how this pissed me off as well, but they didn't get nearly as much backlash about it. But how Ark made DLC for a game that they did not put into, that was still in early access. That pissed me off too. But anyway, the point is, the Culling 2 is canceled. They are going back to the Culling and revamping it as they should have done in the first place. So all is not lost if you are a fan of the Culling gameplay, and they're still working on it. They've received your message, your thousands and thousands of negative Steam reviews loud and clear, because they've of course got review bombed, as many games do when this sort of shit happens. But that was kind of their own dumbass fault, to be perfectly honest.
It's probably arguably one of the situations where perhaps review bombing was precisely the correct course of action.
I'll put the as always, I'll put the link to the article in the description, and there's a video with a message from I guess he would be the CEO or something of Xaviant, talking about what they're doing. So if you would like to view that at some point, just check out the description in the recorded version of the show. If you're live, I guess I can put the link in chat, because technology. There you go.
The wonder of
Did it get sent?
telecommunications.
I don't even know. I don't.
Yeah, I can see
check. It. Okay, because it's not showing up for me. Have people been chatting? Because
they were, but then I closed the window, and when I opened it up again, I guess you don't get the history. So
awesome.
Now it's pretty quiet.
Because the chat on my thing has not been working, and now I just realized I've probably been ignoring people. I apologize. When I'm done with any news injection, I'll go back through and cover it. Anyway, stupid Twitch. You know what's not stupid?
Is it Harvest Moon? I mean Stardew Valley?
Stardew Valley, and hey, that's not a bad thing. They made Harvest Moon, and that was the idea behind Stardew Valley, this Harvest Moon remake, keeping that game alive.
That
and
alone
they made it their own.
Is reason for a game to exist.
Yeah, Stardew Valley has now implemented. Fuck off with that pop up. Has now implemented the multiplayer coming out on August 1st. There was a modded version of Stardew Valley that you get with multiplayer, but it was obviously, with being a mod, it was kind of shaky sometimes. But now there's an official patch coming August 1st for multiplayer. Another game I would love to play multiplayer, because this is one of those games, as relaxing as it is, there's also a stress factor because of the time. There's I got all this stuff to do and not enough time in a day to do it, sort of thing. So I'm excited to be able to start a farm with someone, with a friend, We'll see.
This is definitely like Harvest Moon was definitely an exception to that to my aversion to like sim management games. I remember playing Harvest Moon on the N64 of my daycare provider's son back when I was real young, and just becoming completely obsessed with it. If there had been multiplayer capabilities in Harvest Moon on that N64,
now do you own Stardew Valley?
To this day. You know what? I do not own Stardew Valley, amazingly enough, and the reason for that is very simple. If I purchase Stardew Valley, I will never do anything else. Ever.
Why not?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
you can become a recluse and just not bathe and wear a straw hat all the time.
Yeah. I mean, that is deeply, deeply appealing to me. But unfortunately, there are people in my life who might stage an intervention, and those things can get really awkward. I did, however, play Stardew Valley at one point. For work, we were doing a business trip by car, because that's where I work. It was like 7 or 8 hour car ride, and I actually I borrowed my coworker's tablet, I guess it was.
You played it on a tablet?
I played it on a tablet for just a minute, by which I mean the entire 7 to 8 hours. And it was bad, man. It was bad because she was like, "Hey, can I play?" I was like, "No, it's my tablet now."
That's when you're like Bilbo Baggins in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, man, the sharp teeth and everything. It was really disgusting, and that's why I can't have those things around me.
I mean, I've lost some hours to Stardew Valley. I get into these grooves where I'll play for like just hours and hours, and then I'll take a break for a while, for whatever reason, probably because I don't remember why I stopped. But if I start again, it'll be another time sink, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But especially with multiplayer again, man. If I find someone to play with me, I don't know.
Well, maybe this is it. Maybe you and I are gonna have to journey down the rabbit hole together. Start a farm.
So many homosexual innuendos, but that's okay. What
else are you gonna do out there in the field?
Whatever, man.
With your hoe and your rake.
Brokeback Farm. That's all right.
A hoe and a rake in a field, man. That's a recipe for fun.
I'm open to new experiences.
A barrel of monkeys, if you will.
Welcome to the 1950s.
The big dog's biscuit.
Speaking of old stuff, Rogue Legacy.
Man, you weren't kidding when you said you were good at those.
I was kidding. Rogue Legacy has been out for 5 years, and for their 5th anniversary, they get a surprise patch for the game. A 5-year-old game, a roguelike game, getting a patch, extra content. A lot of it is like a lot of quality of life changes for the game, which I feel like should have been done earlier, but whatever. I'm not going to say anything.
I'm sorry, roguelikes are not about quality of life, generally speaking.
Yeah, it's about hating yourself. They've eased up the difficulty curve, I believe. I think boss remixes only spawn in New Game Plus, if anyone's gotten to that point. I've never beaten the game, but I've gotten kind of probably, if I were to guess, like midway through the game. I've never gotten far enough for New Game Plus, certainly. Also new like language support. I think they added 8 new languages for those of you who are not who don't speak American. Let's see. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else that was major. New traits, I believe. Yeah. There. If you don't know, Rogue Legacy, one of the things is that every time you die, your descendant takes over for you, and that's your new playthrough. But when you get a new descendant, you have to choose from like a few different ones, and they each have their own traits. Some are good traits, and some are bad traits. Some new ones, it looks like. I don't know what some of these are. I'm going to be completely honest. Prosopagnosian. prosopagnosia, clonus, and thanophobia.
Thanatophobia. I think that would be fear of death, I believe. I'm not sure what the other ones are.
Interesting, because the whole point of the game is dying, so I wonder how that affects you. Because they each affect you, so some of them don't affect you. They're dumb. Like, I think you can be gay, so I don't think that actually affects your gameplay. I don't know how it would, but that's like one of the traits you can get is being gay. There's also like color blindness, so when you play through, it's all black and white, or there's like some sort of thing where you can only see in 2D, that sort of stuff. So I don't know how that would affect you, but I'm interested to see. I kind of want to play now, just to see how that goes. Let me see. For Thanatophobia specifically, a brand new achievement has been added. It requires that you finish a playthrough in 15 deaths or less. So that's interesting.
That sounds challenging.
If you're someone who played with mouse and keyboard, that they've now added rebinding for mouse and keyboard, so that's cool. I don't know why we would play this game with mouse and keyboard. That seems like that seems unnecessary to do yourself. But anyway, it's going to be 75% off, by the way, when the patch goes live. So if you don't own it, it's a good time to get it. Great game. That said, you know what else is great? Starting a riot. Hey everybody, this is Starting the Riot. We're back again with more Indie Game Riot. This week we're talking about Wizard of Legend. Wizard of Legend is it was originally Kickstarted, roguelike game, beautiful pixel art, smooth animation, roguelite in the sense of it's similar to like those dungeon crawlers like Binding of Isaac, and recently talked about Moonlighter. It actually reminds me a lot about Moonlighter, except wizardy instead of some guy. You know what I mean? So Wizard of Legend is you also have these spells that you have to choose beforehand. There's a cool the spell system is pretty cool. What the fuck is that?
It's some guy on a crotch rocket.
That scared the shit out of me. Basically, what was I saying? Oh, the spell system is pretty cool. Where you have to unlock these spells as you're playing through, in a traditional roguelike fashion. You level up like that, and before you go into the dungeon, you pick which spells you want to use. Also, you get these like wardrobes that you can use, different colors. It's basically different color. What do you call them? Hoods with the capes.
Cowls.
Sure.
Capes.
Why not?
Robes.
I cannot think of the word.
Riding hoods.
Yeah. Okay. But they also affect your stats. Like they'll raise your hit points or make you go faster or something like that. There's even one that actually will change your hit points to 1. So if you're like hardcore and want to beat the game with just 1 hit point, you can do that. Of course, there's different rooms, but there's also like bosses again, like kind of like how Binding of Isaac was with the bosses and that sort of stuff. I like the fact that one thing I always like about roguelikes is when they add that function like outside of the dungeon, where you can not only level up yourself but kind of like unlock various parts of your base, your home base. Right,
yeah.
Which you can do in this game. And the music, by the way, is pretty dope in this as well.
Oh, that's cool. I was really, when I was sort of watching and reading about this, I was getting really strong vibes from like what's it called? Hyper Light Drifter sort of feeling, but also like there's a bullet hell dungeon crawler to Enter the Gungeon.
Yeah, it's
right. Sort of those two things seem to sort of combine together, and I really found the sort of dynamic, spell system really really intriguing. I'm pretty picky in my dungeon crawler experiences, but this one definitely looked cool to me.
Yeah, Steam actually recommends Moonlighter and Crypt of the Necrodancer, which are two things I could see where Crypt of the Necrodancer's obviously got the rhythm aspect, but the whole dungeon crawler thing is where it's at. Roguelike dungeon crawlers.
Yeah.
It's made by a studio called Contingent 99. It is $15.99 Windows, Mac, and Linux, and currently on sale 10% off, $14.39. And you can also buy the OST separately for $8, $7.99. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's anything I am missing. Magic Arsenal. Oh, it is cool. Like with being able to pick your different spells, it's cool that they kind of cater to everyone's different gameplay.
Yeah.
Do you tend to be more aggressive in games like this, or do you kind of like shoot from afar and kind of whittle them down?
It depends. Honestly, I think I've become more versatile as I've gotten older. But like from way back, I'm like definitely destruction magic. I was the guy who in Oblivion, the solution to basically everything was just to throw as much firepower at it as possible. And I played a red and black deck back when I used to play Magic the Gathering, so that should tell you a lot about my destructive fantasies.
Magic's too expensive for me. I also appreciate all the unlockables. I mentioned like the headquarters, but the fact that it's not just about leveling up, but you're kind of collecting almost. Like I have this like hoarding, like an internal hoarder inside of me. Just
right.
That was redundant, but whatever. I have a hoarder inside of me, and that's why I like Pokemon and games like that where you collect.
Right.
And they it's not necessarily like a base mechanic of the game, but the spells come in these cards, which you collect to level up, and you unlock them as you go. Going through defeating bosses, and there's also merchants and things like that.
So is this in place of a more traditional experience point system?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess they kind of use currency instead of experience points.
Interesting.
Which again is kind of like it really reminds me a lot of Moonlighter, but with magic. I don't know which one was in development first. Moonlighter came out first, fully developed, I believe. But I'm not sure which one was in development first, because you could actually play this game before Moonlighter because of the Kickstarter. I think there was I forget if there was a demo, but I know Kickstarter backers got access to like betas and stuff like that at a certain level. So, but either way, it reminds me a lot of Moonlighter because I played that first, and Moonlighter kind of had the same thing where it was dungeon crawler with almost like a sim management because you were running a shop, but that was also how you leveled up because you would get money and then use that to purchase better stuff.
Right.
So it kind of reminds me of that. Let's see. If you're interested in the story, as I know you usually are, Ian, the story kind of goes every year. This is what they have written on their Steam page anyway. Every year in the Kingdom of Lenova, the Council of Magic holds the Chaos Trials, a gauntlet of magical challenges put forth by its strongest members. Contestants that successfully complete all the challenges and demonstrate superior wizardry earn the right to become a Wizard of Legend.
Mm.
And by the way, there's also local co-op, so if you're into couch gaming, you can do that here. And when you bring local co-op into it, it reminds me a lot of things like Gauntlet.
Yeah,
a little bit, which I loved Gauntlet. I didn't play a lot. I mean, I did play like the original Gauntlet, but I played more of like PS2 Gauntlet.
Yeah, I was like Gauntlet Legends on N64, and then later, I think I played Gauntlet 7 Sorrows, which I think was on PS3, maybe PS2. But I'm a sucker. I honestly, I pick up couch-side co-op games frequently. Like whenever I see them and they're affordable, I grab them because I got friends over and we always like to play video games. It's such a dying breed, of games. It like got to the point where it was so bad that I actually bought Kane and Lynch just to have something to play with my buddy. Like, and I'll tell you what, that is the torture of that game is mitigated only slightly by sharing it with another person.
I've only experienced Kane and Lynch 3, so apparently it was good enough to have 3 installments.
I didn't even know that. It's horrifying.
A friend of mine liked the 3rd one. I don't know much about the other ones. But, what was I going to say? Oh, no, I lost it. There was something I was going to say about the gameplay here. Oh, that's right. The combat. So, with it being magic, I would, one would think that it would be kind of slow because, like, you got to charge it up, and then there's cooldowns, and there are cooldowns for your magic, but they're fast. It's well balanced and well thought out with the cooldowns. You get 5 or 6, I think, different spells that you can use throughout the dungeon, and the cooldowns are quick enough that you can use. You still have spells available, so you're not just left, as a sitting duck in the dungeon, but they're not so quick that you're just spamming it constantly. You can stun lock the enemies if you know what you're doing, but I don't think that really mitigates any of the challenge if you're able to do that, because at least through the difficulty curve anyway. And I really appreciate how smooth and quick the combat is, because again, you think magic, you think kind of slow.
Super important in a game like this. I think it's so fast paced and has this sort of it's not bullet hell here, I guess magic hell elements to it.
The first thing I got, and I was a little worried, thinking because of how many buttons there are to use for combat. I was a little worried that it would get kind of confusing and overwhelming. Have you ever played Magicka?
Magicka? I don't think so.
It's an indie game from like 3 or 4 years ago. It's been a while since that game's been out, and there's a second one too. But a lot of people, it has a lot of good reviews. A lot of people love the game, but I had so much trouble playing that game because of how just it was not. To me, it was just not user friendly with the control layout. Like it was just
completely impenetrable.
There were just it seemed like there were 20,000 things that you needed to push and remember, because you had to like remember combinations because it kind of had that like rock paper scissors thing with different elements, but then you could like combine different things. It was crazy to me. Like I don't understand how people were able to play it. I couldn't stand the game because of it. And I saw this, and because the spells each have their own button map to it, I was like, oh man, I hope it's not like that where you're just like hoping for the best and mashing buttons. But it seems very smooth, and you probably do have to remember what spells you have where, but once you get used to it, and the fact that I don't think you have to really worry too much about necessarily like how certain things affect certain enemies, like certain spells affect certain enemies so much as it is about reaction time and appropriate like timing of the spell. So,
now, are there dynamic combinations of spells that you can do like does using whatever water and electricity or fire and wind together, do they compound each other in any way?
Not that I know of. I think it's more about like so there's like a spell where it creates like a wall of wind around you and it deflects projectiles, or it'll clear an area of enemies or something like that. So I think it's less about the combination of elements and more a combination of mechanic. So you can bounce. So you can like teleport there's a spell where you can teleport an enemy across the map or something like that, or you can teleport an enemy across the map to like the edge of a pit, and then use another spell that would push them back into the pit, and then they'd be dead. So that kind of synchronicity, is that a word? I can't think.
Yes, yeah, that is most certainly a word.
So that's what you're looking at here. Yay or nay for you, Wizard of Legend?
I mean, I'm definitely intrigued. For sure. It's like I say, I'm back and forth, on dungeon crawlers. But when I find one I like, and especially hearing you compare it to Gauntlet, I'm intrigued. My attention is grabbed.
Just to point out, I only mentioned Gauntlet just because of the co-op part of it. It's definitely not a hack and slash like dungeon crawling brawler or whatever you call it.
Right. Well, yeah, you may, obviously it's caster oriented, and that's another thing that's always really appealing to me, because I was a caster back. I remember playing Baldur's Gate and stuff like that. Always a caster, and it takes a lot of commitment to casting classes to play old RPGs based on the D&D rule set that's so where wizards are so weak, especially early on and stuff. So my dedication to casting is definitely another thing that definitely piques my interest about a game called Wizard of Legend. That's for sure.
Are you a Magic user in D&D?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Too much for me to remember. I prefer just hitting things. Well, you know what we're going to hit now?
Quest Hunter?
Peep Show!
Please give all your attention to Early Access.
This week on Peep Show, we're talking about a game in early access called Quest Hunter. Quest Hunter is, let me get back to that page there, made by 2 Zombie Games. Basically, you play as a dude who's hunting quests. Just put that out there. It's got a really nice art style, a little bit cartoony, but top-down isometric, obviously. But there's a game that it reminds me of that I cannot put my finger on now that I'm trying to think about it. Crap. Well, anyway, Quest Hunter is available on early access. Let me see. I told you I'm rusty because now I was supposed to get this game up on there and I didn't. I apologize.
Were you looking for the Steam description?
Well, I was going to try and get the price. I got it up now, though. It's early access, Windows, Mac, and Linux for $14.99. However, again, on sale, 35% off for $9.74. You can also get the collector's edition, which gives you an art book and a soundtrack. Or you can just get the soundtrack for a little bit cheaper if you don't want the art book. Or you can buy them separately for $5 each, $4.99. Anyway... what it's about is you can it's not dungeon crawler necessarily, but it's not like an open world. Each area is its own little contained thing. However, there's some a little bit of crafting involved. You can level yourself up and level up your equipment and find new equipment. You can also, again with like the home base building, you can claim some space to kind of like camp out in, and that'll be like your own little space in the world, which is kind of cool, I thought, for this kind of game. And I believe there's a little bit of a tower aspect to it, where when you build up that base or your camp or whatever you want to call it, you also have to protect that camp from time to time.
Interesting.
You can also recruit people, which I love recruiting in games as well. You can recruit people for your camp, I believe, that will help you out. There's also puzzles in the game. So there's a lot. They have a lot going on from different genres coming in here. And lots of enemies to bash and treasures to loot. And of course, the classic Save the Princess quest line going on.
Naturally.
They are calling it a story-driven RPG between all this stuff. However, non-linear dialogues, which is interesting. Puzzles and humor. I'm not exactly sure what the story is, and even if I did, I don't know if I want to spoil it for you. Go play it for yourself. You can also play co-op online or local with up to 4 people, which again kind of reminds me of Gauntlet a little bit. This probably more than the other one almost.
This one looks more like Gauntlet just from the
a little cartoonier
vibe, yeah.
And each character you can upgrade with new different powers and things like that, depending on how you want to play. And of course, there's bosses on each level that you open up. It's a good time all around. It is. I'm not sure if they have. I'm looking to see if they have like a soft like release date or anything like that. I don't believe so. They, by the way, Two Zombies did play. If you don't recognize them, they did create other games such as Deadroot, which they claim to have over 6 million players. I've personally never heard of it, but I mean that's a lot of players. Color Journey is another one that won a game dev contest. Doesn't say which. It just says Game Developer Contest 2016. So I don't know what contest that is, but hey, they won an award. If you're interested. Are you into... So, again, this is kind of like how... you mentioned you were into Gauntlet. So, with that mixed with the puzzles, mixed with the little bit of base building, tower defense, mixed with the recruiting, is that exciting?
I mean... It's cool because that really fills... I mean, the issue that I have with action RPGs so frequently is that I feel like they're just not, not deep enough. So, like, things like Diablo and Gauntlet, although I can get some enjoyment out of them, there's definitely a piece of me that remains, somewhat unsatisfied without, being able to do things like solve puzzles or navigate dialogue trees with NPCs. That's all, really gratifying for me. So something like this, definitely intriguing. Definitely cool. I'm also, I'm the kind of guy who, will definitely, I'm willing to give most, isometric RPGs, a go.
I think it's the one. If I have one complaint, it might be that it seems a little slow for me. I mean, you can see on the screen now that the guy is kind of like waddling around almost.
Right.
I feel like it could be a little bit faster paced with the movements and everything like that. Just to give it a little bit more action feel.
Yeah.
But, I think that's a minor gripe, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a sort of aesthetic, unless it becomes a severe hindrance to the gameplay. But just from the looks of it, it seems like you're not necessarily moving significantly slower than the rest of the action. So,
and I like I mentioned I like the art in the game, but I actually like the art even better in that pause menu where you're leveling up your character. It reminds me a lot of some board game art I've seen. 13 Dead End Drive, it reminds you of a little bit, maybe a little bit less caricature-y, but I really like the aesthetic of the game. So
definitely has that look, and gorgeous character portraits and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's real.
Steam, was it this one or was it the last game that you added a? Oh, we forgot it was for Wizard of Legend for the... Oh,
yeah. I really dropped the ball on that.
Well, let's put this... We'll rewind it a bit here. To continue the legacy of Eric in his tradition of finding shitty reviews on Steam, Ian went and found one for Wizard of Legend. So this is for Wizard of Legend, not Quest Hunter. So go ahead and read that if you'd like.
Yeah, so this one I chose because there was it's like the most underhanded compliment. Not recommended with 10.7 hours.
I will say at least they gave it a go. 10.7 hours.
That's true. That's dedication. Unless they left it on or something.
I guess that's true.
Solid and fun core gameplay, but severely lacks in content, mobs, maps, bosses, secrets, etc.
He says of an early access game.
Here we go. Ready? Feels a lot like an EA title.
Now, now that you mention it, though, I'm wondering if they... Oh, no, again, this is a Wizard of Legend, not... See, now I'm confusing myself.
Right.
I'm wondering, though, if what they meant by that is early access. Because they're saying it's lacking content, so I'm wondering if...
Oh, well, that's not as funny, Josh.
Okay, we'll stick with what you thought.
I thought that they were accusing Electronic Arts of producing solid and fun core gameplay with a severe lack of content. Of course, the truth is that EA produces the content; they just charge you through the nose for it, right? So I guess there you go. Anyway, the guy wraps it up by saying, "I like the game myself, but at this moment can only recommend it to the most hardcore fans of the genre."
I feel like if he gave it so many compliments outside of lacking content.
It's weird that it's a not recommended, isn't it?
Why you wouldn't recommend it. What's this guy's name so we can call him out?
Oh, man. I cut off his name.
Oh. It's alright.
But I mean, this is the thing. Like you could take that last line and you could argue that it's recommended only for connoisseurs of the genre, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes like a fine wine.
The hipsters.
So I don't know. This guy just needs to get his life together, I think.
The hipsters are roguelike dungeon crawlers.
I did incidentally scare up one for Quest Hunter as well.
Yeah, please do. Feel free.
So this is short, sweet, and to the point from a gentleman named Kamale, or perhaps Kamale. He said, "Gameplay is crap."
That sounds like a Steam review.
I chose it
nice
because
and constructive.
It was so Steve. 0.2 hours on record. Gameplay is crap. This is a man or a woman or otherwise who knows what they want out of a game.
Not crap, apparently.
Not crap at all. Played for 15 minutes, and
but a man such as yourself who is obsessed with butts, you would love crap.
Well, see, here's the other thing is that I have this real neurosis where it's actually hard to get me to give up on a game, even one that I'm really not enjoying, because once I started, I have this neurotic compulsion to finish it.
Do you complete it or just finish it?
To finish it. If I don't like a game, then I don't need to explore every nook and cranny, but I do like to beat it. There are exceptions. There are games that I have walked away from, but they're not very many, and
Alpha
sometimes
Protocol.
It gets that I walked. Oh man, I played Alpha Protocol twice.
Oh god, I hated that game so much.
Oh my god, Mike Thornton, the greatest spy since James Bond.
I'm gonna transition back to our faces, but that game. That game had so much promise. The concept of it, the like RPG stealth assassin thing, and God, it fell so flat. I was so.
It was janky. I mean, it was definitely I mean, this is the thing. I see this all the time from Obsidian. And full disclosure, Obsidian is one of my favorite game companies.
I forgot they made that. They are a fantastic game dev company.
But they have a really bad habit of releasing great concept games that are pretty janky in their execution. It's gotten better, I think, as they've matured as a company. And I mean, they've got great talent. I mean, until recently, Chris Avellone was the chief creative officer. There are a bunch of former Black Isle guys that were involved in that. So they've got the concepts down. And I mean, I loved Pillars of Eternity. I thought that was really good. But I also didn't play it until probably a year or 18 months after it was released. So.
I will forgive them for Alpha Protocol though, because I mean they are by far they have far more successes than they do failures.
I mean,
they made the best Fallout game, and it's not even their IP.
Yep. Well, Yeah, I mean, technically, I think technically the reason that they were able to pull that off is because they did have some talent from the original, IP holders over at Interplay, and that probably helped. I remember reading an interview with Todd Howard where somebody was like, so, what about the established lore of the Fallout universe? And he was like, yeah, I don't really care about it. We'll use it sometime, but the most important thing is whatever Bethesda prioritizes.
Multiplayer. You know what else?
God.
You know what we're going to prioritize now?
Some free fun?
Free fun, baby.
All right. Welcome back to Indie Game Riot. I'm Ian. I'm new at this. Bear with me. But I'm going to talk to you about some free fun that I had last night. And that doesn't sound very wholesome, but in fact it was, because that time was not spent with any vice, but rather
you had some free fun to yourself with the lights on, I would say.
Well, hey, no, the lights were off. Don't get me wrong. When I play a game like Lumin, the lights are going to be off.
Excuse the music.
And so a lovely little itch.io title called Lumin, by a company called Team Lumin. Very, very mysterious company, mysterious little game. At its core, it's it's a puzzle, puzzle game, simple puzzle game. Finished it, I think, in about 20-25 minutes. And that was really, I was walking all over the place trying to find, everything that I could. But it's, it's not nuts and bolts with a really interesting mechanic of being able to capture and deploy light, from various light sources around the world. And you do this to do everything from facilitating platforming to powering devices and solving, sort of simple puzzles. And it's an incredibly meditative experience. The world is simply rendered, but the art style is really really lovely. The mechanics are pretty clean. With a lot of these sort of ultra indie, low key, itch.io titles. There's always a little bit of weirdness, a little bit of getting stuck on geometry, but this was overall really smooth, and had a very subtle sort of story. And there's a style of narrative that I actually see a lot on itch.io, probably because of the kinds of games that I'm attracted to when I get games from itch.io, which tend to be sort of these cryptic, meditative, introspective adventure and puzzle games. Developers like Kitty Horror Show and
What internal message did you receive from Lumin?
So it's a very subtle story. It's set in this sort of archaeological dig. Sort of right in their description, they say Lumin is a game about bringing fallen stars back to the sky. Play as a bearer of light and collect fallen stars that now inhabit a deserted excavation site. Explore a world powered by the light of the stars and uncover a rich past of a civilization now gone. Can you bring the light home? And I would actually say that if I had been describing this game, I might not have used some of those adjectives. Just uncovering the rich past of a civilization now gone implies to me that there's going to be a lot of lore, to absorb. And this was a much subtler, more sort of poetic approach.
In their defense, though, this game was made for a game jam, I believe.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. My change of adjectives, if I were describing this, would not be to the detriment of the game. The game was perfect, and the narrative I felt was perfect for the experience, because instead of telling you explicitly this story of this past civilization, it instead introduces these themes. What was interesting to me is that the themes were not just sort of themes of the passage of time and the continuation of civilization through memory, et cetera, associated with the past civilization. but it really interfaced with the excavation site itself as a setting that was conducive to these themes. And so I was really able to lose myself in it for about a half an hour. And the one thing I don't think I mentioned yet is the music. It had this sort of soft, vaguely psychedelic, an electronica tinged acoustic guitar soundtrack that was, I just loved it. I really did.
I'm trying to see if they had any credits for the music, but I don't see it. But that music is pretty fantastic. I agree.
Yeah.
So one thing with these games I'm always impressed with is just, especially for game jam games, is the thought put into the puzzle design. Mm-hmm. I know this game is more. It's not just puzzles, but also it's almost like a walking sim, where kind of like how Gone Home was in a way. Mixed with puzzles. So, but still, just it's hard to come up with in my mind, it's hard to come up with these puzzle designs without making them either way too hard or way too easy, or just completely complicated or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was pretty impressive to me that they were able to do that in a shorter amount of time. I'd also like to point out that they won second place grand prize for the Sammy Showcase, and also at the same showcase, second place Peer Choice Award. So congratulations on that. I could see, I wouldn't mind seeing this fleshed out into a full-blown game, other than just a game jam game.
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was really to your point about finding the sweet spot in puzzle design. Is that a lot of that comes from the context that's set by the pacing of the game. And I felt like the difficulty of the puzzles was absolutely perfect for the pacing, of this game. It's the kind of setup where even going into it, as I was sort of getting a sense of the kind of game that this was going to be, I was like, oh, I know how this is going to go. I'm going to get down to the last star, and I'm going to be crawling all over this open world with no way to find it. And, that never happened to me. I always seem to spend just the right amount of time trying to find the solutions to the puzzles for it to be really satisfying. So I'd love to see that expand, like you say.
With collecting the stars too, not only so it's like a puzzler mixed with like a walking sim, but actually it reminds me a lot of with collecting the stars of a collect 'em up, on how those puzzles worked with like Banjo-Kazooie and stuff like that, and collecting the jigsaw pieces. But in this case, you're collecting stars, which I just realized. It kind of had an epitome watching this gameplay now, that it was like that. So which is another genre that people seem to try to bring back, but hasn't 100% come back.
Right. But
I did love that genre.
Now, one thing I will say, generally speaking, with games that are this sort of down tempo, so to speak, this low key. I don't necessarily recommend them, for everybody, but if you are a fan of those, walking simulator, light puzzler, experiences, those more meditative games, this is definitely good. It creates an atmosphere really, really effectively.
I just want their OST now. That's all I want.
Well, you can get it on itch.io. They provide it as a lovely 9
do they?
megabyte zip file. They do, yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't even realize. Well, that's taking that.
Yeah, get it.
I might put that in the stream OST thing. Anyway, thank you for leading that. Not bad for your first time. You stumbled a little bit in the beginning, and then you picked it back up. That was good.
I did what I could.
You'll get used to it. I stumble all the time, and I've been doing this for 5 years now. Man, I can't believe we've been on the air for 5 years. Wow. Anyway, well, even though we've been on the air for 5 years, we still have to end every week, and that brings us to this end of this episode. If you like what we do, you want to help us out, there's a bunch of different ways. You can head to our patreon.com/Indie Game Riot, or I know nowadays a lot of people don't like Patreon, which is completely understandable. You can just support us right here on Twitch if you're watching live. You can do the subscribe thing for $5 or whatever, and if you have a Twitch Amazon Prime thing, you get one free subscription every month. and you can swing that to us, and that actually doesn't cost you any money outside of your Prime subscription. That's a free subscription to any channel, and we always appreciate that help. You could also help us out by sending us news articles, games to check out, people to interview, that sort of stuff. You can do that through Twitter at IGR Podcast or Facebook.com/IGR Podcast. And of course, emailing us, contact@IndieGameRiot.com. Of course, dick pics, once again, to Ian at IndieGameRiot.com. Thank you, Ian, for your first show, and thank you for showing up and doing a great job.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to whoever had to listen to me for my first time. Really appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here and so excited to be a part of this.
I'm excited. I'm excited for future episodes, and we'll see you. Assuming nothing crazy happens, we'll see you next week. Do you have any last words before we move on?
Butt pics. Send them.
Butt pics. Oh yeah, I forgot. You're in the butts.
Send them.
There you go. One more thing for my last words is that this Friday, as a reminder, is Indie Fireside. We're talking about Yearwalk. If you haven't played it, play it now. It shouldn't take that long to play. And you can join in on the conversation, whether it be in the chat, or you can also join us in audio on the stream. You can join, and that's led by Vance, who's in the chat, Holly Gaborin, and also his brother Zach. And they will talk. It's basically a book club for games, where we talk in depth about a game that's chosen at the beginning of the month, and then we do the broadcast at the end of the month, last Friday of every month. So we hope to see you there this Friday, or here I should say, on stream this Friday for Indie Fireside Yearwalk, episode 7, I believe it is 7 or 8. I think it's 7. I'm not sure. Anyway. Hope to see you there, and we'll see you guys next time. Say goodbyes.
Bye.
Toodles.